Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's RC Maxfield here for the Back to 12 podcast. And in today's video, we'll discuss a new portal target for the Red Raiders and one that is just kind of interesting from the standpoint of who he reminds me of and everything like that. And he is a grad transfer and he would be an instant impact guy. But before we get into that, I've got to know, okay? I was asked this yesterday by some of my buddies, and I want to hear from you guys. You're taking someone to Lubbock, Texas for the first time. What is the restaurant you are going to first? Let me know down in the comments below. Is it Spanky's? Is it Chimmy's? What is it? Is it the steakhouse? Just let me know the first restaurant you would take somebody on their first visit to Lubbock, Texas. What would it be? All right, let's jump into this. As the guy we're talking about here is from the Big Ten. He is a grad transfer. He is a guy that is a pretty solid player. When you look at him on film, he kind of reminds me of Baylorshireman at Creighton. Just right-handed. And yes, the headband does come into play here. And his name is Paul Mulcahy. He is from Rutgers, a 6'7" transfer guard, a guy that averaged just over 8 points a game, just under 4 rebounds per game, and just under 5 assists per game last year at Rutgers on 37% shooting from three. Now, I want to preface everything I'm about to say here. I don't know how likely this is, but it is a name that I have heard come up here in the past, 24 to 48 hours when it has come to Texas Tech men's basketball. He's a Northeast guy. He's from New Jersey, stayed home and played at Rutgers. He's got some interest in Pitt. Personally, I'd be surprised if he comes down to West Texas. Now, there are some selling points that you could sell him. He'd be an instant starter for the Red Raiders. He'd be playing in arguably the best conference in America. He'd be playing alongside a guy like Pop Isaacs, arguably the best shooter he's played with at the collegiate level, right? Like, there's a lot of positives that Texas Tech can sell among the facilities and the degree plans and whatever it may be. But again, if a guy wants to stay in the Northeast, let's face it, it may be all West Texas to us, but it's not all West Texas on the recruiting trail to some of these guys. So I do want to go through his scouting report because, again, Texas Tech has showed late interest in him. And I think there is a chance that maybe it picks up a little bit and Texas Tech has a outside slim chance to get him. But again, this is kind of what we're looking at in terms of the player. He's a really good passer. I mean, he's a guy that's the first thing that stands out to me. Now, does he take some chances that he shouldn't? Yeah, probably. But elite passers typically do that. They thread that needle, and sometimes you just don't have the opportunity to do it, even though you think you can. He had a 29% assist rate last year for the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. And now his size allows him to see over the defenders. Again, I mentioned 6'7" guard. He can play off ball. He can play on. And that's why I think he'd be a really good combination with Pop, because I think Pop has some really good off ball tendencies in terms of the catch and shoot. And I think a guy like Mulcahey, he could really open up Pop's opportunity for space to get more open looks, right? Really good in the pick and roll as well. And as we know, Grant McCasland loves a good pick and roll player. Mulcahey fits that mold perfectly. He's patient with screeners and really good with lob threats. He had a couple of lob threats up there at Rutgers, played really well with them. And as we know, Texas Tech landed one of the best lob threats in the country last season in Warren Washington in the portal, right? And I think he played perfectly alongside Warren Washington. The aspect of what he would allow others to do also is appealing to me. I mentioned Pop playing off the ball. I think it'd be good for Chance too. Now, don't get it twisted. Mulcahey could play off the ball as well and let Pop be the primary ball handler, Chance be the primary ball handler. But it's good to have those options and not allow a defense just to primarily focus on one guy with the ball in his hands at all time, right? So you look at that. Now, I mentioned he is a good passer, but he had a 19% turnover rate as well at Rutgers. Now, mostly that was him trying to just do too much. Simple and plain. I watched some of the highlights, about 20 minutes of his highlight tape, about 5 of it, probably about 3 minutes of it were turnovers. And I was like, all right, what is he doing here that is turning the ball over? And he's just trying to force and try and make that extra play that isn't necessary, whether that's him getting into the lane and he sees a guy that he thinks is open in the corner, and then the defense sprints from the arc, catches it, steals the ball, and they're off and running, right? He does that a lot. But he also just tries to set his big man up in position, and sometimes, hey, the big man just doesn't catch the pass or whatever it may be. That's what I noticed the most. Again, can play on or off ball offensively. Solid spot-up shooter. Again, 37% from three. Much better catch-and-shoot guy than off the dribble, in my opinion, looking at the tape. But he understands spacing well, and that's something that I think would be big alongside guys like Pop and chance if he were to come to the 806. The last thing that really stood out to me on the offensive side for Mulcahey was he's crafty around the rim. Again, he's 6'7". He's playing against smaller dudes at the guard position, but even when he's in there amongst the trees, he figures out and finds creative ways to finish at the rim. And that's something that really stood out to me. Specifically going to his left. He knows how to finish with his left or his right hand. Really likes to go to his left and finish with his right, throw off the defender a little bit. But yeah, he's really crafty around the rim. Now, on the defensive side of it, really active hands. Also, he just creates mismatches because he's 6'7" and guarding guys that are more like 6'3", right? He is versatile in terms of the defense, probably guarding 1 through 3, if we're being honest about it. If he's guarding a 4 with any kind of beef or size, I don't feel great about it watching the tape, but I do think that he's a solid guy in terms of, hey, he's got the size. If you need him to guard a 4 that's smaller, he can do that. But really, he's going to be guarding guys 1 through 3, and he's got really good quick feet where he can stay in front of anybody on the perimeter, and his length creates problems in terms of, hey, you're going to have to pass around me if you're a 6'2 guard, but he can stay in front of them as well. As I mentioned, he reminds me of Baylorshireman up at Creighton. If you guys have listened to this podcast or this channel for a while, dating back to March Madness, you know that I like Creighton. You know that I like Baylorshireman. I think this is the kind of guy that Texas Tech needs. Do I think that they land him? I'm not sure. I'm really not. And if you ask me today, I'd probably say no. I think he probably stays up in the Northeast. But I do like that Texas Tech is going after a guy like this because this is the kind of player Texas Tech needs right now to complete this roster, especially if you get a guy like, I don't know, say Deshaun Jackson, right? If you land him and he takes up one of the other scholarships, if you land a guy like Paul Mulcahy, I think you're in a much better spot than I thought you were going to be in 2 weeks ago, right? Obviously, big ifs at this point. Who knows if you even get a visit? But there has been rumblings within the Texas Tech men's basketball recruiting circles. Hey, they've reached out to Paul Mulcahy. What are the chances they get him? I don't know, but they do have a role to offer him in terms of, hey, you're going to be a starter. You're going to be a starter in this first or second best conference in America. You're going to get coached by a guy in Grant McCaslin. You're going to get really an opportunity to be seen by a lot more people because, let's face it, the Big Ten just doesn't have that national, I don't know, pizzazz. That felt weird to say. It is Father's Day weekend, so I guess a Father's Day term is fine. Pizzazz in terms of eyeballs that they attract when it comes to national TV. Big 12 is always on national TV. Big 10, not so much, right? So I think that that's something that could be appealing. Could you play against these potential star players in the Big 12 and have your draft stock go up if you're Paul Mulcahy? I'm not sure, but I think that that's kind of where we're at in the recruiting process of, hey, at least Texas Tech is reaching out to guys like this and maybe can get them when maybe Pittsburgh, for example, a team that's reached out to him, maybe they go some different direction, right? Or maybe Texas Tech is going after these grad transfers that are impact guys right away. And you'll see a little bit more of them enter the portal here once June is done and summer 1 is done and they've got all their credits. There'll be another little bit of a wave of grad transfers into the portal, and they'll be immediately eligible as grad transfers, right? And Texas Tech may go after them. But it's good to see them actually in the discussion for a guy like Paul Mulcahy, who, again, I don't think he's going to be oh my gosh, he's changing the direction of Texas Tech and they're going to be, Big 12 favorites or anything like that. But he is a solid player that Texas Tech does not have a guy like him on the roster with his size, and he would be a much needed and beneficial player to the Red Raider roster. All right. You know what I have to do after doing these scouting reports with you guys? Answer this simple question for me. Do you think Texas Tech, do you want Texas Tech to land Paul Mulcahy from the transfer portal? Just a simple Y for yes or N for no. I am RC Maxfield reminding you, if you want the latest Texas Tech news and rumors all year long around Texas Tech men's basketball, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button to stay in the know right here on the Back to 12 podcast channel.